Hello everyone. Today we are going to try and understand this revolutionary text Utopia in a very simple manner. It was first written in the year 1516 in Latin language and was later published in the year 1551 in the English language. These years are often asked in exam, therefore you must remember them. The term utopia was coined by Thomas More himself, and it basically means no land or nowhere land. But since his time, it has come to mean an ideal place, a place with ideal perfection, where everything is beautiful and everything functions in a just manner. Let us start by looking at a brief introduction about the author. Thomas More was born and raised in London and he received the best education that his time offered. He entered Oxford and then he later went on to study law and became a lawyer, a statesman. He also became a politician and served in the court of King Henry VIII. Such diverse roles allowed him to observe the societal problems firsthand, which are later reflected in his work Utopia. Thomas More was also a devout Catholic, and as a Catholic, he strongly opposed the Protestant Reformation in England. He was against the divorce of King Henry VIII from Catherine of Aragon. More remained loyal to the Pope rather than his monarch, which displeased the king greatly. Later in his life, he was tried for high treason and was found guilty, leading to his execution. Thomas More was an ideal Renaissance humanist who was widely traveled, and these travels abroad exposed him to diverse societies and political systems, the knowledge of which came in handy while he was composing his work. He also witnessed many injustices and political turmoils in his life as a part of the court, which he also critiques in his text in a very subtle manner. Finally, the works of the classics such as Plato, who presents his picture of an ideal commonwealth in his Republic, also helped shape his work. All of these combined are the major source of inspiration behind his text Utopia. Now let us start with our discussion of the text, and we will first discuss the major characters that we encounter in the text. The first major character is Raphael Hythlode. He is a traveler and is now old and sunburned with a long beard but is very wise. He meets Thomas More and Peter Giles in Antwerp, and he is the one who goes on to provide us with the description of the utopian society. The second character in the play is Thomas More. The author of the text is also Thomas More, and there is also a character in the text which is Thomas More. He is an intelligent and a curious man who is committed to his family and public service. The last important character is of Peter Giles. He is also a historical personage like Thomas More as well as a character in Utopia. He is a citizen of Antwerp and is honest, loyal, learned, and kind, and is symbolic of a perfect Renaissance humanist. Now we will discuss the text of Utopia. To understand Utopia, just imagine a world that's free from poverty, from greed, conflicts, wars, a place where everybody is happy and everybody exists in harmony. That is basically the essence of Utopia. As the text opens, we find the character of More, who has been sent abroad as an ambassador by the King Henry VIII of England to hold negotiations. From there, Thomas More moves to Antwerp, where his friend Peter Giles resides. One day, when More is returning from church, he runs into Giles, who is having a conversation with Raphael Hythlode. All three of them come back to More's house, and there they have a lengthy conversation. Hythlode talks about how he has sailed the world and has also traveled the New World, where he came in contact with the Utopians. Thomas More and Peter Giles encourage Hythlode to go into the service of a prince or a king as a counselor, but Hythlode completely disregards this suggestion because, according to Hythlode, princes and kings are more interested in chivalry and war, and they do not pay heed to the wisdom of the counselors unless and until it benefits them in some ways. He then gives an example of a dinner party that he had attended at Cardinal John Morton's house a few years ago in England. There, he comes across a lawyer who was praising England for severely punishing its thieves with death penalty. Hythloday countered this by saying that death penalty is a very disproportionate punishment for stealing. He suggests that instead of killing the thieves, England could have focused on improving the social conditions that breed thieves in the first place. These suggestions were ridiculed by the group of men present there. Until and unless Cardinal himself approved of these suggestions, after Cardinal's praise, all of the men present actually praised these suggestions. This basically suggested that the men surrounding Cardinal are just self absorbed flatterers. After this discussion, Hythloday goes on to describe the utopia that he witnessed. Hythloday describes that the utopia he witnessed was on an island where 54 cities are built in a very proportionate manner. Amerut is the capital city because of its central location. In Utopia, the citizens do not own anything individually. All the resources of the city are equally distributed among all citizens. Money doesn't exist in Utopia, and they think of gold as a useless metal. Without the private ownership, no one develops pride or arrogance. Utopians live in a patriarchal family setup with no fewer than 10 members and no more than 16 members. All the utopians participate in the rural as well as urban works. In Utopia, the citizens are required to work at least 6 hours a day, and when they are not working or sleeping, they are free to do whatever they want with their time. Only a few laws exist in Utopia, and lawyers are banned for being too cunning in their interpretation of the laws. There is only one offense which leads to punishment, which is adultery. If any citizen commits adultery once, they are forced into labor, and if they commit adultery twice, then they are sentenced to death. Utopians are overseen by magistrates who are elected by the people themselves. Therefore, in Utopia, we see that there is communal ownership, and the officials elected by the society guide the society with reason and logic. The leaders are also chosen on a fair basis of merit. Education is provided for everybody regardless of their gender or social classes. A work life balance is maintained in Utopia as leisure and intellectual pursuits alongside labor are also promoted. Limited working hours, which is 6 hours a day, leaves ample time for leisure and intellectual pursuits. There is religious tolerance in Utopia as different religions are accepted and can coexist peacefully. Reason and logic are the governing forces in Utopia. People in Utopia live in communal harmony and cooperation. As there is no private ownership of property or wealth accumulation, there is absence of greed and envy in the citizens. Utopians are also reluctant when it comes to war, so they often hire mercenaries for this purpose. The basic philosophy of utopians revolves around how can people attain happiness. They are essentially hedonists. For them, pleasure is the most important thing in life. Therefore, we can see how, with his description of Utopia, Morse showcases a society that is based on reason, logic, and a society where there is equality and justice. This ideal representation of the society is in stark contrast with the Tudor England, as the Tudor England was governed on strong hierarchical basis, and the Protestant Reformation had led to the belief in the divine right of the king. Therefore, we can also view Utopia as a critique of contemporary problems that existed in his times. Thomas More criticized the social and the economic problems of the 16th century England in his work Utopia. He also critiques war and violence which were prevalent during those times. With this, we complete our discussion on Utopia. Thank you so much for watching.